Right here will be the chat.
Oh.
I've never done this before. I don't know. I don't know if we're live or not. I'm going to assume that we are. I'm going to move this back.
What up, y'all? Does that mean that there's 2 people on there? 3?
Oh.
Oh, it's growing.
I think so. I think that there's some people. If there's anybody here, I've never been live before, but if there's anybody here, if you could just say in the chat that you can see and hear us, I would really appreciate it. Just so that we know that this is all good before we get going. And we can wait for a little bit to have some more people join us. I'm going to take a drink of waters. Hello, thank you very much.
We see you, Vera. What up? We can hear you perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect. I feel like everyone's prepped after a year of virtual meetings. Like, mute check. Am I coming in clear?
I feel like you more. I mean, I do see virtual clients, but yours is like strictly virtual. So yeah, you're very much so used to it. Awesome. Well, hello everybody. I have some STEM toys. Has anybody seen this one from, I got it from Amazon, but it's so satisfying. So I feel like if I need to keep my fingers occupied, I might be using this a little bit. He is not a fan. It's distracting for him. This one also is funsies and quiet, so it's less distracting. Awesome. Well, hello everybody. Super excited to be doing a live and have everyone here. So today we are going to talk about our relationship. For anybody that doesn't know me, whether watching live or in the future, because I do plan on posting this, my name's Kathlena, and I'm autistic with a heavy dash of ADHD. And this is my husband, Arlen.
Hey, y'all.
And I guess we should say, just kind of out of the gate, that he is also neurodivergent. But we're not really quite sure where you land on that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like heavy ADHD. That's my guess. But anyways, okay. So I have lots of questions. If anybody in the chat wants to give us a question, we can do that live as well right now. But I do have a bunch of questions that people submitted. And so for all of you that gave us some questions, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Do you want to start by talking about just like how we met and like the start of that?
The fake story or the real story?
I guess we'll go with the real story, cool. Just for time's sake.
Well,
yeah.
The reason I said fake story is because when we first met just 10 years ago, online dating, it was still in the phase of like
kind of sketchy.
There wasn't a good app yet, so it wasn't cool. And we were like finding the free ones, so we went to
we were in our early 20s. We couldn't afford that.
Yeah, Match.com was like, that's for adults. So OkCupid was I don't know if it's still a thing. I think it's still a thing. But that was the thing that we went to. And I messaged about her. I was looking for something in her profile. This is like, early 20s dating strategy online. I should write a book. But I was looking for the one thing that didn't jump off the page on her profile that I connected with and message her about that. It was about her cat. And
a very good thing to start off on. Good conversation starter for me.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of my cats, as some of you probably already know.
Yeah, so we ended up, hitting it off, obviously, and we kind of like had the same friend group right away. We kind of like built our little life in Oakland,
Mhm.
lived there for a while, and yeah, we've most of that time though, of that 10 years, as you've heard from her stories and everything, was not with any clue of neurodivergent. So there was like the downside of that and of just not being aware. I would say like we made up stories in our heads of
Mhm.
like what this or that behavior means.
There
And
are questions about this, just so you know, so
yeah,
we will get further into
yeah,
that, but yeah.
yeah. So we ended up kind of refinding ourselves this year.
Yeah, I would say with like the last couple of years, it was building. So yeah, that's how we met. And his story is a little bit. I always thought it was funny because I actually signed on, or I made an account on there as a joke. Um, with one of my friends, and I signed on to delete my account. And I was like, well, I might as well just like take a little peek here at some of the messages. And his was the very last message. And so he totally we almost didn't meet. And so yeah, it was fate, I would say. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into that one first or take live as they come in, but uh, yell at me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Ansem, is that correct? No. Hello, I have never been in a relationship. I think I am 10 years behind my peers. Any advice for a relationship or
First
first
relationship.
relationship and how to be true to myself?
It's a really good question. As far as being behind your peers, everybody is at their own phase and pace. And so we cannot, as hard as it can be to not do this, but to try not to compare yourself to other people and where they're at, because you're on your own life path. And then as far as advice for a first relationship and being true to yourself, um, I would say, I mean, to do your best to be like open and honest from the start. That I think is, with your partner as well as with yourself. Especially when you haven't been in a relationship before, it can be really easy to kind of like get absorbed into it. I know that when we first met, we were young. We had definitely had been in previous relationships, but I would say that we were each other's hyper focus for a while, and there was some fun sides to that. But it's also not the healthiest to like become just so absorbed, and all you can really think about is your
I think
is
you
your
naturally, in that way, you naturally become something you're not as well, just to make sure that that works. Um,
Mhm.
so just as balanced as you can keep it, I think to her point is right. And yeah, true to yourself. Just like, what are your boundaries? Don't be. It sounds like if you haven't been in a relationship and that's something you're really wanting to, you feel like you're behind. That feeling is there. Um, don't don't sacrifice like what it should be by it just being. Don't sacrifice like how you really want a relationship to be just to you know
Just to
check the
be in
box.
one. That's a great point. Okay, so I'm going to pull up some questions here. I didn't write down anybody's names because I didn't ask for permission to say it in the video.
Can everyone
So
see names when they post? Should I not say that?
no, they can.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so I'll start. First question is problems and solutions when just starting out to live together would be amazing, as well as tips and tricks to adjust to married or family life. I love that question. um, so, problems and solutions for when you first start living together. We moved in together. I feel like both of our ADHD, even though we didn't know that that's what we were experiencing, really played a role in the big the part beginning of our relationship, because we were quite. I feel like we we followed our own timing, but that was also kind of quick. And being in our early 20s as well, uh, we yeah, I mean, we moved in after 6 months of dating, right? Sorry if this is all over the place, you guys. But we really had been like kind of living together prior to that. And we had roommates for the first, like when we officially moved in together, we had roommates. And then about 6 months after that, we got our own place. Can you think of any like problems that came up in the early time of our relationship?
So it's about starting to live together. So I think, well, her and I are very adaptable. So I think that question, the answer is different for every person. But
Yeah.
like we've always been, um, we've had really good times and really bad times, but we've never lost respect or been able to not adapt to each other. Um, and so I guess the general statement would be like start the flow of communication when you're making a decision
Yeah.
to live together, so that it's not weird to bring it up, and then also control the times when you give that feedback if there's a lot of learning, so you don't end up saying the thing that you need corrected throughout every day. Like a tip we had heard at one point was maybe for you, it's set up a time once a week to kind of just review how things are going, so that you're
Mhm.
not correcting things throughout the week and it becomes like a nagging feeling for either person.
Yeah. I think also, and maybe this was just for us, but the fact that we met so early, we really didn't know any better. You know, I mean, we were both coming out of situations of living with roommates, which was awful. It was, and so like living just the two of us together. And mind you, we were in the Bay Area, and so that was really the only like I had never lived by myself. It was not attainable. You had to have roommates, and so I think coming from a situation of like really bad situations with roommates into this, now new living situation where it's just the two of us, and having good communication was really really helpful in that beginning
The,
phase.
the second part of it, of just as well as tips and tricks to adjust to married or family life. Uh, so have the realization, and this is something that we've just really kind of come to, but
Took 10 years.
yeah, it, it puts their life once it starts, because if you're getting together in your 20s, it was like, oh, this big thing happened, like, and then you think that, okay, this big thing happened, it's isolated and you'll have more time before the next big thing, and then you realize, and this sounds kind of silly because of course, but uh, in the moment you don't realize that it's never going to stop. There's going to be a big thing, a big thing, a big thing, a big thing, and never let it be that we'll reconnect after this big thing, or we'll have time for each other after this big thing. If you ever let that go for the big thing, there is a good chance that you'll never get it back without consciously deciding to get it back. And I think that's something that we kind of went through, of just, um, yeah, a string of big things, and thinking that we'll have more time for each other, but you have to make that.
We'll reconnect after this is over, and then something else would happen, and then we would say we'll reconnect after this, after we get past this, and those things just kept happening. And especially being um, on the spectrum myself, without knowing it, those big things were very impactful for me, and really hard to adjust to. And so it ended up leading us to be really separated. And there's a question in here about couples therapy, but that was that you know after a few years of just kind of constantly saying like, well, we'll get back to us and focus on us after we get through buying this house, or after we get through you know having our son, or whatever. And it just kept building and building until we realized like, hmm, we need to focus. That we were at a point of like, we need to focus on us or it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had like heard that we really liked was well, I'll speak for myself, but um, whether you have kids or not, or work or whatever, but even over your kids, put your relationship with your partner first, because that the
Mhm.
kid you're not going to not love and make time for. That's just going to be
It's
you're,
natural.
it's natural. But the thing that's not like necessarily going to be natural is the partnership. Like that needs the attention and the priority above anything else,
Mhm.
because everything's stronger with it.
Yeah.
All right.
You can read the next one.
All right. How do you manage needing alone time if you feel anxious or overstimulated, irritable, or what your what is it called? You need to decompress. You're like overwhelmed. What is it?
Overstimulated?
I'll think about it.
I would say that this question definitely falls on me. I'm
Burnout.
definitely burnout. Oh yeah, yeah. I am definitely the one that is. I'm the anxious one. I'm the one that gets overstimulated. I mean, he has his moments as well, but it shows up significantly more with me. And I would say that a big thing that's really been helpful in our relationship is that both of us really enjoy and require solo time. And that has always been a uh, a focus without any guilt on either side, because both of us understand the necessity for each person. And so yeah, putting a focus on, without having like blowing it up into something that it's not, just saying I need to hang out by myself tonight, or I just and we've even gotten to a point where there doesn't even need to be a ton of communication. I think he can kind of pick up on my energy, and he'll like check in, but also doesn't push it, because I think that you can kind of feel where I'm at this point and know that I just need some space. I wanted to so yeah, I mean, again, going back just to like the importance of communication, and vocalizing your needs of some solo time.
I think what you're saying has always been kind of like that dynamic, and in general, we've been good about that. The anxiety and like not wanting to go do something maybe with friends or family, or too many things in a row, or um, that's changed since your diagnosis and realizing like that
Yeah,
you're on the spectrum, and being able to, I guess for myself, know that I already kind of we worked with it. We knew that you had anxiety, but we didn't know like how significant, and the why. And when we have the why, it kind of, for myself, it put me in the right space to, not like I didn't believe it before, but it definitely made it more real. And there's
that's true.
a different respect for it, where like, okay, well, if you're not going to come, there's no story attached to it, I guess. I'm
Hmm.
blabbering, but there's no story attached to it. So when it's, I don't want to go see these people with you, or I want to hang back, it's not a personal thing against anybody involved in it. It's
Hmm.
you can't life right now, and you need to chill
Yeah.
and listen to ASMR.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely having the diagnosis. I held on to a lot of guilt and my own personal stories about my anxiety, because I knew that I was experiencing what I was feeling and what I was experiencing, whether it be the anxiety or overwhelm or overstimulated, uh, burnout, meltdown, whatever, shutdown. I knew that I was experiencing it and that it was like so intense, but without knowing why. Um, I held on to a lot of guilt and shame around it, because also, I mean, a lot of that was a lot of the people, and not really you, a little bit you, but it was also like a collective. Most of the people around me didn't understand and made me feel like I was overreacting, or I was making a bigger deal out of something than it needed to be, which played a voice that created a voice in my own head of, am I crazy, like why am I experiencing this? And so for me, just knowing that like what I'm experiencing is real, has helped significantly in just being able to like be kind on myself, and vocalize my needs and have my needs taken seriously, by him. Even if he doesn't understand and it's not his experience, he understands that it is my experience and it is very real for me. And I think that's helped a lot. Okay, so this one is a three-parter. What?
This is the virtual trainer, former virtual trainer in me, to throw out questions in the chat.
Oh,
we'll take the live ones.
Yeah. Anybody that's here live, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat because we are answering those ones as well. So three-parter. It says the first one is, have you ever obsessed over an argument you had already had and basically reactivated that fight over and over? 2, how do you work through fights without getting to the point of yelling? And 3, how is couples counseling helping? Truly curious about it. So this is a really, really good one. As far as, okay, so I didn't think about answers for any of these questions beforehand, but I did read this one and I was just kind of like thinking about maybe, you know, what I could respond to with that. And for the first one, have you ever obsessed over an argument? The funny thing about how both of our brains work, which has it has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks, is that both of us have incredibly short-term memory, and we don't hold grudge. You know, like we don't stay mad at each other for long, and oftentimes we forget why we were mad at each other. And so while there's some benefit to that, the drawback, which we learned in couples therapy, was that when we weren't working through our arguments, and we would forget about it and then just go about our day, we still were holding on to the feelings of whatever the argument was about, but not remembering. And so there was not remembering why. So we were just associating, at least I was very much so associating these negative feelings that I was holding on to with, like, I just started associating it with him. Like it's caused by him, because I couldn't remember what I was upset about, which meant that I couldn't also vocalize it, right? We couldn't have the conversation because I didn't remember what had happened. I just knew that I was upset. And so one thing that has really helped with that is what he had mentioned earlier in this, which was having a like a weekly meeting where we can like air out any grievances or like talk about anything that we need to talk about. And I feel like I've gotten a lot better about feeling comfortable in the moment as best I can, or close to in the moment, telling you, you know, if there's something that you did that upset me, or just vocalizing how I was feeling. But I still have, it's something that I'm definitely still working on. Do you have anything that you want to add on that?
No, I think you pretty much hit it. I think the second one about yelling, you never really.
I think that's one of the big things that has really helped me feel comfortable with you. That's a no-go for me. That immediately, anytime yelling fights or like somebody raises their voice to me, I've always just associated it with a level of disrespect, and it also honestly sends me into like fight or flight. Like I completely shut down. I can't process those feelings. And we've definitely had heated arguments. We've had our moments of, you know, what I would describe as like blowing up at each other. But one of the biggest things is that when I can feel that that's coming, I remove myself from the situation, because I know that there's nothing I can't effectively communicate in that environment. So I will often either go to a different room or sometimes go on a drive um, to clear my head and calm my nerves, and then revisit it.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone's like passion levels are different, which kind of throws that into it. But the respect issue is like that's foundational. That's the only way to bounce back because everybody's gonna have their like down parts of a long relationship, and the only way I feel like we were able to come back from a down spot was that the no matter how disconnected we were or whatever, or that layer of respect never sacrifice that. Um, so I don't know. It's not like a we don't fight, everything's perfect, but it's a you have to know that if you go to a certain place, you can't fully come back. Like if you go to that certain place there, it's harder to come back, I guess. So we always like treated that with a lot of respect.
I think he's also like, you've always been very respectful in my communication style, even before we knew that I was on the spectrum.
For sure.
You've always been really respectful of the fact that I usually need space and before I can come back and
Clap back.
have a conversation about it. So the last one on that is, how is couples counseling helping? And I can start out on and just say that couples counseling has been very, very helpful. Definitely, I think finding the right counselor is really important. And we knew going into our sessions with the therapist that we're working with that I was on the spectrum, and so that we were able to kind of create a focus around that. And she's been amazing because she specializes in people who are neurodivergent. And so she's been incredible in helping guide us, as far as like how we communicate, and helping give us. She's given us tools to also help with like intimacy and connection and things like that have really been focused on taking into consideration my needs with that. And then also just helping to keep us accountable, because we very much so get in our own heads and kind of forget to focus on each other. And so having an appointment that we know, like, oh, we're supposed to listen to this chapter, or we said that we would go on a date before this appointment. We don't want to get yelled at. So it's been helpful for accountability as well.
Yeah, I don't think I can add anything on that. That's exactly what I would have said. The accountability piece, I think, is the biggest part for us.
Yeah, because even though like when we started, we were in a much messier place, but it didn't take long for us to be able to come back and connect. And even though we were in a significantly better place and we don't necessarily feel like there's anything that we have to work through, we're still maintaining couples counseling because of the accountability part. So we don't go as often anymore. We usually like once a month, but it's just a really good time for us to be able to check in and hold us accountable and give us ideas on how to connect too, because that's also not something that really comes naturally. So the next one is a 4-parter, but I absolutely love this series of questions, and I wanted to save it for kind of the middle. We've got a few questions after this, but I feel like it's a fun one. So first question is, what are your favorite traits about each other? Second is, what's the most positive benefit that your diagnosis has brought with regard to your relationship? Third is, what things in a partnership is your autistic brain really, really good at? And the fourth is, how did you communicate your diagnosis to your family and friends? And how does your husband practice allyship for you? I love that. Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So first one, favorite traits about each other. Okay. I absolutely love your sense of humor. That's our dog Boomer. Hi, buddy. I love your sense of humor. I love that you love animals and tolerate my need to have lots of them. And I love the way that your brain works. You're super, super intelligent in sometimes a hard to follow way. But I feel like it matches well with mine and kind of keeps me on my toes. And you've always got something interesting and some hyper focus going on. So yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is honestly the same. So like we're super different on if you write the things down that we're interested in, our lists are totally different. For a lot of it at least. But the humor piece is like has always been a foundation of our relationship. We like to laugh. So yeah, your humor has always been the same. I guess same thing for me. And then the biggest thing that I think has given me like uh, so much pride in our relationship is what you bring to the table is when I'm stressing about like letting us down or something during our hard financial times or there's never been a feeling of pressure or like disappointment or I mean and it's gotten definitely bad in times where we were for a lot of the times we were just single income and it was always a no worries approach like it'll work itself out and that really kept me in check for a while of like going off the deep end of like freaking out was that consistency in trust in the process and yeah so I think that's like the biggest piece that I love about you and then her hyper focus in um, nutrition is like I don't get it. I don't understand all of it but like it's remarkable you bring up I mean like test her throw like one thing in the chat of like what would you do with this ailment and she'll tell you 37 different things that like how do you even know of that like a word with that many syllables it's crazy but she'll know exactly why it's like that and how to cure it with nutrition and or assist or whatever.
They're not cured.
Yeah. I knew right when I said but yeah I mean it's truly remarkable so it's been really cool to see her gain more confidence in it because everyone else was like impressed before she was and she's recently gained a lot of confidence in that
yeah
and she's real cute too.
The most benefit or the most positive benefit that the diagnosis has brought in regard to our relationship.
We hinted it. Yeah, we hinted it before, but the lack of stories we tell each other now. So, for instance, honestly, like one of the biggest ones, because I'm a very touch-oriented person. That's like how I show my affection, and it was. I mean, many times she'd be like, "I don't want to be touched," or like, just and no cuddles, please. And I always just took offense to it like that must mean XYZ about us or me and there's a million different ways that or things that I think come with it being on the spectrum that you could turn into a story and it was removing that narrative and starting fresh and just re-understanding because you've always thought about everything in one way especially if you're not like on the spectrum you've always thought about something and even if you are because honestly like I wasn't forgiving of the things with myself either. And that's kind of helped too. So it's both ways. Like for me, a lot of times, like now I can say freely, like, hey, you were talking for the last 5 minutes. I wasn't here for it. Like I was nodding and I was responding, and I don't remember anything.
That's been a big one. There's just a big understanding for both of us.
Permission.
It's permission to just accept each other as we are, which I feel like people if you're in a neurotypical relationship, that's something that is really important as well. But for us, it was very much so just understanding how not only my brain worked, but also his brain. I do see this question, and we're going to get to that. But we both had stories in our head of knowing that he was checking out, or me having to tell a story multiple times and him not grasping it, and me feeling like, well, that must mean that he doesn't care about what I have to say, and vice versa, because I definitely also check out for sure during conversations often. And so, oh, my hair fell out.
My hair fell out.
Allowing ourselves to freely rejoin the conversation and be honest and say, I checked out. Can you repeat that?
I think that has also been like a big reason why, other than it is expensive to get diagnosed, but it's also like, I didn't feel the need so much after a lot of those conversations and figuring out, because I'm like, honestly, I mean, your own feelings for your own stuff. So this is just for me, but who gives a shit if I am or not? I know that I'm more open to receive how my brain works and figure out how to fill the gaps with tools or processes or whatever, and just forgive myself for that and just be me. So I don't know. Before I was like, maybe that will tell me about myself, and now I think it was like, now I know myself a little bit more, and I don't really need that diagnosis, because of how we've been able to bring that awareness and just like be okay with ourselves.
Yeah, and as far as also like, for me, giving like blunt answers had been, like, as far as just honestly saying, I always thought that I was doing a favor to him by just like clearly saying, no, I don't want to be touched, or like, please don't, or I don't want to cuddle. I thought that because there was nothing else behind it, like, what else are you going to take it for? That was how my brain was, other than like, I just don't want to be touched right now. And so, yeah, I think that it also helped me though to know, like, oh, that's a sensory thing. That's been a big thing. And there is also a question. I'm just gonna jump down really quickly to that one. And it's,
did you want to cover that last?
I will, okay. But because this is related to it, there was another question that said, do you have sensory issues with being touched? Obviously, yes. But I think a big part of that is how I'm being touched. And like, so understanding that this is a sensory thing has also allowed me to kind of tap in and understand and how to work with it, basically. So the last one is, how did you communicate your diagnosis with family and friends, and how does your husband practice allyship for you? So I'll start with the answer on that, and then you can finish it.
Sure.
As far as communicating my diagnosis, I didn't a lot. For the majority.
Consciously, though.
Consciously, yeah. I wasn't receiving very good feedback, and it made me just not feel comfortable communicating it initially. So I told my husband, obviously, a few of my friends, and a couple of my family members, and that was really it for a long time. And then I decided on World Autism Awareness Day, which also happens to be my birthday, to make an Instagram post about it. And that was basically how everybody else found out. I felt like it was kind of easier I had this channel going and I was sharing with you guys so openly, but it took me a long time to be able to share on, what.
No, it was just funny because y'all knew before.
Really, yeah. And then how do you practice allyship?
Um, I, I think it's, I don't know if we need to go too much into it because I think it's pretty much what we already covered there of the permission and and I haven't had to be like, whoa, 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 like don't say that about autistic people. Like I don't know, that hasn't come up. That hasn't been a thing. It's just been more of like a, if she doesn't feel like going to go do something with somebody, she's feeling too anxious or whatever, and she's holding, like, that's not uncommon. There's no apologies. Like before in a relationship, like the other person doesn't want to and jumps out last minute, and that it's not like we did this, but the classic like, oh, she's feeling under the weather. Um, there's no apologies or excuses. Like she's not here right now. She's hanging back on this one. Like
She didn't want to come.
yeah, and it's
That never changed. That was always how I was. Now we just know why. But hi Jennifer. Uh, I yeah, I was always that way. So there was really never an excuse. But I will say, as far as practicing allyship, he's been educating people. So the people that he has talked to, the family
That's
members that he has talked to about it, uh, you get a very similar response of like, well, she's not autistic because of
what was one of your
X, Y, and
thumbnails?
Z.
You don't look autistic.
You know, yeah. And so I think the biggest way is you just like calmly and respectfully educating people that are interested in listening,
Yeah.
and having that conversation. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's probably rapid fire on some. Not, I mean, to
Okay.
some with
Yeah,
respect.
yeah.
Are there any? Did we do this one? No. Um, are there any relationship positive or negatives you think is unique or amplified due to being neurodivergent? I think that I think we kind of touched on some of these things. Um, Probably the forgiveness, as long as you can get there with each other, but like the forgiveness of like not adulting correctly. Like that's a big one.
For
Where, like,
having both of us be neurodivergent, that's one we joke a lot about, and it has made our lives a little bit harder during times.
for sure.
uh, but there is such a forgiveness for each of us if I don't feel up to cleaning the kitchen or doing the laundry, and same with him, or like if I forget to pay a bill. There's just a lot more forgiveness and understanding that has come from that. I think for both of us just being neurodivergent. And then the negatives are also kind of the same, like because there's positives and negatives to both sides. And
if your partner, I would say, isn't neurodivergent, they've got weaknesses. Like there's I think a lot of the way that she thinks and that I think are unique for how our brains are, but everybody has one of those brains. Like everyone has their own brain, and there's weaknesses on everybody's front. But if you can get to a place where you're not hiding those weaknesses anymore, you can kind of forgive each other and then pick up the slack where it needs to be. Yeah, there's like I don't know if she's ever called customer service or dealt with any confrontation. There's little things that I step in for, and there's things that she steps in for, and I think that it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent or not, or one is and one isn't, or both are. And I think just getting to that point. But the benefit was this forced us to get to that point where it's easy not to force yourself to get to that point, and I think that's where the distance starts.
Yeah.
Oh, this can be an answer about platonic relationships too. That's a huge point. Yeah. I've had ups and downs with friends, and I think a big piece of it getting to a better place was just like take the competitiveness that comes from defensiveness out of it, and that defensiveness comes from making excuses for yourself or being you're not comfortable with this part of yourself. And I think that's where most of defensiveness comes from. And for a male relationship, I can speak for, I just see that there's, with my buddies, there's that alpha complex sometimes that pops up. And if I don't have to forgive myself or apologize for myself, I guess is the better, then I'm less defensive and there's less of that competition that kind of gets in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's all stuff I just learned from understanding each other better.
Yeah.
You want to read the next one?
Sure. Thank you for sharing. My baby just diagnosed with mild autism and wonder how is it going to be for him when he grows up? Is he going to be able to find someone? Yeah, definitely. Thank you for being here. I hope that you're still here. If you're, yeah. I think that the important part is everybody can find somebody, you know, and I think something that is really, really misunderstood about autism is that skills can be learned. So they don't come naturally. Is, you know, I will say that's not, they haven't come naturally for me in the way that, from what I understand, they come naturally for other people. I didn't know that, but they can be learned, and there's a lot of benefits to having a brain that is wired this way. You know, some of our greatest minds in history,
almost all of them,
yeah,
of some level of.
Yeah, definitely. Which actually, one of the questions that I have next, you're gonna get a kick out of, because I found out somebody that we like is on the spectrum that I don't think you knew. Okay, so next question is neurodivergent fellow autistic person here. Hello, Alex. I think the important thing is to not place limits on him. Oh, this was a response to her. Yeah, totally. I always say there's a lid for every pot, so I wouldn't worry about him finding someone. Totally. I love that. Thank you, Alex, for chiming in. Okay, so for the next one, it was who are your favorite autistic characters, celebrities, advocates, or characters? And this is one that I had to like do a little Google because I had like one quick answer. But I found out that Jerry Seinfeld is autistic.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Which also makes a lot of sense when you like think about it, in my opinion. Men's Magazine. I could be wrong.
No, I mean they probably wouldn't publish that.
But well, so here's the thing: a ton of celebrities are autistic, or I'm sorry, a ton of comedians are autistic. It's a very common career, as well as just acting in general, which makes sense because, you know, masking. But I mean, when you think about it, like he does really well one-on-one with people, which is a you know, a thing. But like his like love of his cars, and like I bet that.
And very blunt, always tells the truth.
So blunt, yeah. So anyways, I just we like comedians getting, what is it, getting coffee in cars with comedians,
something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, and so when I saw that, I was like, I didn't know. And then my next one is Amy Schumer, who is not on the spectrum, but her husband, Chris Fisher. I saw a couple of their cooking shows.
Those are funny.
And they're so funny. And I love him. And I love how much Amy loves him. And like, you know, he was also late diagnosed too. And so I love them and their chemistry and their dynamic. And then my quick answer when I first saw this is I don't know if these characters were written intentionally to be neurodivergent, but I highly, highly suspect that they are, or at least some of them, and that would be Bob's Burgers. Um, like Tina, come on. And I love them. I love that show so much. There was one episode that we watched after we started kind of figuring out both of our brains, where Bob basically he's trying to find something really important. I think it's like a birth certificate, and he was like, "Well, one of his kids' birth certificates." He was like, "Well, I put it in I put it in a safe space." But then he couldn't find it, and the amount of times that has happened to us,
and it went real uncomfortable in that
it went
episode where we really
so
had to
deep,
like.
and we were
It was a
just
mirror.
like, we were like, "Oh, this is us." It was hilarious, but also very real. So that's my answer.
I don't have an answer because I'm not sure, but I agree with her answers. I did want to. We moved on, but I wanted to say to Familia, um, part of the learning about our brains, and just knowing, kind of also help pinpoint that like the best part about us, that we like most about each other and ourselves, is like directly because of that.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's not like a thing that we're people that also have this, or it's just we're people, and that doesn't, it's not a burden, as long as the only reason why it is
It
even a
ever
burden.
was because we didn't
Well, we don't.
know.
Well, we also don't fit. Like you don't fit into what is supposed to be or whatever. So
Mhm.
that's the main. I think that's the main piece. But yeah, just knowing that comes directly from that. I even had somebody at work say to me, if I get my own team, you're the first person I'm calling. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, like I know that if I need a project done, like in a week, you'll do it in 3 days. You'll tell me you'll do it in 3 days.
Love hyper focus.
You'll actually do it in 2 days, but you need that third day to recuperate. And I can't distract you or bother you, and you won't answer my calls during those 2 days. But you'll get all the work done better than anybody else could in a week, in 2 days. But you just need these things a part of that. I was like, and that was actually like right when we were having these discussions about Kathlena being neurodivergent. I was like, oh.
Mhm.
So there's benefits for not even just relationships, but I'd also say for your kid, don't worry about career, because there's like I have a really good job in a high performing job where I have to always be on it, and there's drawbacks that my team knows about with me, and my benefits the benefits of me far outweigh any like downside to those traits.
Yeah, yeah. You find something that, you can have
She
accommodations.
is a fidget. Yeah, she wasn't in the beginning. She
Yes.
brought it.
Whoops. I just dropped it. Let me get it. I also have this one, but it's too distracting for him. I love this one, but it makes noise, so it's probably not the best for.
Hey, I recognize Sophie.
Yeah.
I read all the comments. I stalk her comment page, and Sophie's we know Sophie.
Yeah, this is we got it on, or I got it on Amazon. It was like a 4-pack, but it's just fun to kind of do silly shapes with.
Bree, I think it's either Bree or Bri. I think it's Bree.
Bri.
Is it Bri?
I don't know.
What? Law. That's a great statement. Neurodiversity has done a lot of, or embracing neurodiversity has done a lot of good for your relationship and just life in general.
Yeah, totally.
All right, should we do a 6 minute warning?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's end it at an hour, but we have a few more.
Mm-hmm.
Keep throwing in your questions, and
comments.
Yeah, you were right. It's pronounced like brie.
Oh,
cheese.
brie cheese. Soft cheese. I'm excited to be able to have a little bit more of that after the baby comes. He's actually super smart. Above his age, just the social skills. Yeah, he'll learn them.
100. Where were we at?
Oh,
this one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I often feel like a burden in relationships because I have a lot of needs and boundaries related to sensory issues. How do you feel less guilty about that?
I love this question. Um, I know personally that I can hi Bernie, very easily. Yep, that's Bernie. Come here. Can I say hi?
He's also neurodivergent.
Yeah, he's just, oh, and Boomer just gets very jealous. Okay, all right. I really like this question because for me, it's very easy to get into my head and feel overthink my needs, and I have felt like a burden in relationships and have had a hard time feeling like I brought enough to the table, not just even in partnership, but also friendships. That has been something that I've dealt with, and I just wanted
Hmm.
to see it. I will say that again, just knowing, and in the same way that I have combated or like kind of fought against my own negative inner self talk. I just lost my train of thought. Basically, I'm just trying to replace it with true thoughts and the truth. So when I have a negative feeling like a burden, doing my best to acknowledge that that was a thought and like that's all that it was doesn't necessarily mean it's truth, and replacing it with a truth. And but that's honestly something that I am still practicing. And in our relationship, I have often felt like um, he has to bend more than I do. So I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add on to that.
Um, I don't. I don't know if that's mine. I don't know if that's mine. Yeah, I think that's. She's not. I mean, on the record, she's not a burden. So that's what I'll
Just
let.
I would say just practicing healthier inner dialogue, and that plays into so many different
Back to the original
areas.
question, I think of one of them was like, what are your favorite parts about each other? I didn't mention this, but I just thought about that. It's always been like we always have our own conflicts with ourselves, but overwhelmingly, one of the first things I felt with her is that like she loved herself still, like no matter what, and she always did, and that was one of the sexiest things about her, and continues
It takes work.
for sure. Um, Does your husband? I think we kind of talked about this, so this will probably be fast. But does your husband have to explain something you do? Like if you're not attending a work function with him or a family get together, can't be at your home. That happens. If so, how does he explain his wife's needs? Yeah, I think we kind of hit it before. Of just, I just don't apologize. It's a fact. That person's not here.
You don't have to explain it
Like, yeah,
like that. It
Kathleen is
doesn't
not
have
able
to
to
be
come, or she
explained.
doesn't. Yeah,
There doesn't have to be a reason. Just she wanted some solo time.
that's usually what
Yeah,
the answer
yeah.
is. She
That she
she
just
wanted
wants,
alone time.
yeah. And definitely like the having people come here has been a practice, and I think a big part of that is just communication, and when he wants or when we want to have people over, like having it be a planned thing, because there's just certain things that I have to do mentally to prepare, and feel okay about having people in my space.
How do you feel that you are able to communicate your thoughts and process emotions during an argument slash communication where the neurotypical party is able to explain themselves perfectly and easily?
Um, yeah, removing myself. I hit on this earlier in the conversation, but I oftentimes don't know why I feel a certain way, or I'm not able to communicate it effectively in the moment, and that's okay. That's my process. And so I just removing myself, and then having that respect from him of understanding that I need to do that in order for us to have an actual healthy, fair communication.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's the same reason why a lot of times, if you were diagnosed earlier, you would have gotten extra time on tests. Sometimes in the moment, it's not the best time to
Totally.
respond or answer.
Yeah.
Um, I find it easier to form relationships with other neurodivergent people. Do others too? I think that's a message for the whole group that's listening. So throw it in the
Mhm.
chat. But
I
it's hard to go ahead.
I was gonna say I think I definitely do, and I would say that the majority of our close friends, are in some way neurodivergent. Not all of them, but I would say that a lot of them. And I think that, they're interesting minds. And not to say that neurotypical minds aren't interesting, but there's also, like, I don't know, conversation is just interesting, and I just feel like there's a little bit more understanding and a little bit more forgiveness for certain things, with friends that kind of get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
All right. Final. You'll have 30 seconds to throw in your last question before it's.
Or comment.
Yeah,
This was a lot of fun.
it was.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody that was here and participated in the chat. It was really fun being able to connect with all of you guys live. Thanks for joining me, by the way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I had to come on and meet everybody. Bye, Bree. Bye,
Awesome.
y'all.
All right. Bye. Have a good night, everyone.